Hey there, it's Jean here with Waldorf-Inspired Learning, and I'm so excited to be back again with Janet Langley, one of the authors of The Roadmap to Literacy. Hey, Janet.
Hi.
Welcome. Hi.
Yeah, hi.
So Janet is the co-author with Jennifer Militzer-Copperell of this amazing new book called The Roadmap to Literacy.
Yeah.
And it's all about, it's a guide to teaching language arts in grades 1 through 3 using the Waldorf approach. So Janet and I, this is actually our fourth conversation that we've had, and I'll put a link to the other interviews if you haven't had a chance to watch them yet. But it's been so much fun to have this conversation from the perspective of a homeschooler, but who was also trained even before I had kids as a teacher, and then Janet, who's worked with Waldorf teachers in the classroom for many, many years. So here we are, both of us with years of experience, and it's been so much fun.
Yeah, and I even homeschooled my grandsons for a year, my first and third graders, so I even have that homeschool experience behind me too.
Yeah, it's great to have all of that woven together in these conversations.
Yeah.
So the first interview, just to give those of you who haven't seen all of them, this is a series of interviews. And the first one is developing literacy in the early elementary grades. That's the first interview we did. Then we did developing literacy with the roadmap to literacy. And we really started to dive into the organization of the book and how you might begin to use it in a homeschool setting. Our third interview is planning main lessons with the roadmap to literacy. And this interview, we're going to focus on planning practice sessions with the roadmap to literacy.
Right.
So I'm so excited about that because this distinction between introducing new material and doing some practice within the main lesson time, and then also having like a later morning practice time, it's kind of a new conversation in both among Waldorf teachers and among schoolers.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So interesting.
We, in first and second and even third grade in the United States, we were trained mainly to teach a block of math and then let it go to sleep for a month while we taught language arts, and then let that go to sleep while we taught math. And as Jennifer and I delved into how to teach an effective literacy curriculum, we realized that, number one, that basically we would not be able to cover the necessary curriculum in the 3 years if we did that. The second is that our research showed us that it went against every, every neurological model, everything about how children learn.
Yeah.
And that actually children, to learn a skill, need daily ongoing practice until they've learned that skill. And for example, you wouldn't invite or take your child to a violin teacher in the first grade and have them take violin lessons for a month and then say, okay, we'll see you in a month, and we're not going to do any practice, we're not going to do anything, we'll just come back in another month. That would not be an effective way to learn how to play the violin. And it's the same thing with math and with language arts, with language skills, is that teaching a skill takes a different approach than teaching a subject. You can teach history in the fall and then let it go to sleep and come back and teach the next, series in the spring, and it's fine. You don't have to practice history every day to get some knowledge of it, some understanding and appreciation. But so that's what happened, is that somehow over the last few decades or something, we Waldorf teachers here in the United States got this idea that that you taught skills the same way you taught subjects.
Yeah,
so everyone set up that way. And actually, it certainly wasn't an effective way to teach math and language art skills. in those first 3 years. Those
Right. Yeah. And you don't need a huge chunk of time, but you do need small amounts of time, just like an instrument. The way you're describing it, you need little small amounts of time on a really daily basis, or most days, right? The majority of days, to do that practice. So I'm loving that the conversation also in the homeschooling world is switching into that idea of doing some short practice sessions. So for example, when you're in a language arts block, and the example we used in the last interview was Aesop's fables. So perhaps you're doing some fables, animal stories, in a block, in a main lesson block. So that's the main chunk of your work each day. But later on, after you've completed your main lesson work, you can do, even if it's, 20 minutes of math practice, you can just practice some math problems or whatever skill it is that you're working on developing at the time, for just little bits each day after you've completed the main lesson, right?
Sure. Yeah, it's actually the really kind thing to do to the child, because to be wanting them to learn that 3 times 4 is 12, and then not asking them what 3 times 4 is for a month, and then coming back and hoping they're going to remember. It's one of those things where we need to work with the developing nature of the child, and research and actually just experience will show that practice plays an incredibly important part in learning basic foundational skills.
Yeah, and the corollary. So today we're going to talk about how to plan one of these practice sessions for language skills. The corollary, Jamie York is a wonderful Waldorf-trained math teacher, and he has, I remember what an eye-opening thing it was to discover he has these flashcards on his website, like you have so many resources at Waldorf Inspirations, and it only took about 10 minutes a day, maybe 15, but to review those math facts, it makes all the difference in the world, right?
Right, exactly. And I'll say one thing that was happening when I was going into Waldorf classrooms and evaluating and mentoring teachers. What I was noticing is that the main lessons were very rich, but the practice classes, if there were any, were very, basically they were anything but practice. They were finishing up, copying something into a main lesson book. They were going for a nature walk. They were writing birthday cards. They were basically doing everything but practice. And when I thought about what it was like for me as a teacher, and in talking with these teachers, they spent so much time on their main lessons that they basically had no time left over to create effective, differentiated, in the case of numerous students, practice classes. And so pretty much they were just not using them if they even had them available to themselves. And so that's why we really tackled this in the Roadmap to Literacy, is that we thought if we could give teachers and homeschooling parents, teachers, a template that they could see. It doesn't have to be all fancy. And everything doesn't have to be handcrafted. What's important is that you do it.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're looking at this and saying, how could we look at, at designing, and we're calling it a block. It's a practice block. So the practice block goes in tandem with the main lesson block.
Got it. Okay. So so I usually call them sessions to differentiate from the main lesson block. But it really is something that you need to plan for. And I love what you said. So those who know me know that one of my mantras to my parents, and because it was a mantra to myself when I had my kids at home, is it's the doing that counts, right? So all that dreamy, wonderful, all those ideas of all the fancy things that you're going to do, if you don't actually do it.
Right, exactly. And And in fact, we could almost look at planning every main lesson block that it's not completed until you've also done the practice extension block that follows it. You know, you can actually look at it as one process and work on it together. Although I will have to say that the one thing about the practice blocks is that they're, you know, really they begin where you left off at the end of your main lesson block. And so you can get an idea of what you're going to do in there. But especially with homeschooling, your children sometimes can make much more rapid progress because it's just one-on-one. And so you might find, that you kind of flew through the concepts you thought you were going to teach, so maybe you did a few more. So you always have to be adjusting and teaching to the child, the phase the child is in, the literacy phase, as in the roadmap to literacy, and, you know, and just meet them. But you also don't want to draw it out so that you're having them practice over and over again something that they've, they're over that. They got it.
Right. Yeah. They'll let you know if you do that, right?
They do, don't they? They do. They're like, again? Yes.
Yeah. So here's where we're going to start. I'm going to share my screen, and this is really an extension, just like you were talking about. We're paralleling that, modeling that. An extension of the last interview. We're going to start. There is this, because there's some overlap here. So well, first, let me backtrack a little bit. Janet has this wonderful website that she put together with another teacher,
Patty Conley.
Patty Conley, thank you, called Waldorf Inspirations. And I recommend this all the time to homeschooling parents because there are so many resources here.
Yeah. For all grades. Yeah.
For all grades. So for one thing, this is where you can buy the Roadmap to Literacy book.
Yes. It is the place where you buy it.
The place, thank you.
The place, yes.
Yeah, the place for that clarification. But also, you can find under grades here. So all the way early childhood through 8th grade, there are resources on this website, all kinds of activities and games and block ideas and story ideas. And I mean, so rich.
Right.
But there are tons. So we're focusing on 2nd grade, and I go to planning, and then what you'll find is this block rotation right here, 2nd grade block rotation. So that's what we're going to look at. I'm going to stop sharing and show the actual form, but I just wanted everybody to see, first of all, I want to point out that there is an extensive number of resources at waldorfinspirations.com, but you can also find some of the planning forms that are in the book and that will be really helpful for you. So let's go to that first form that we started with actually on the interview number 3. So I just have to switch. There we go. So this is the block rotation for 2nd grade. We're using 2nd grade as the example grade here. And what this points out, so this is a whole year, right, of a suggested block rotation. And what we wanted to point out is that the, well, on the far left column, it shows which block you're in. And, you know, so the first block, 4 weeks long, but the main lesson block is kind of in this center section here. And then the practice block is over on the right.
Right. Exactly. So yesterday we talked about in our last interview, we talked about how to approach planning a main lesson block. That's that column over there on the left. And then today, the right-hand column. And you can see that while a math main lesson is going on, your practice block will be language arts.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Yeah. And then when you're in a language arts block, your practice will be a math practice.
Yes, absolutely. And by doing that, then you're allowing your children to myelinate those neural pathways and to make those connections solid. So there will come a time when your child will look at, 5 times 3 and know that's 15 and never have to think about it again. Yeah. And so obviously that requires ongoing practice. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then it happens. And then you don't have to practice that anymore.
Right, because they got it. All right, so now we're going to switch again and look at some forms for how to go about planning one of these practice blocks or practice sessions. Yes. And we have 2 forms. We have a blank one and a filled out one. And this is really, I just wanted to point out that this is for a week's time, right? So this is planning a week's worth of activities. There are also forms that you can find at Waldorf Inspirations that have just one day on a page. Yeah. So I don't have those. We're not going to go through those today, but I just wanted to point out.
Let me just say that the forms that we're going to be using now and the forms that are directly related to literacy are actually, you'll find them on the Roadmap to Literacy section of Waldorf Inspirations website. Right. And just scroll down to the bottom right now. We're going to make them, we're redesigning the page so it'll be easier to find them. But right now you just scroll down to the bottom and you'll find all of the different planning forms, and there are many that we refer to in the Roadmap to Literacy, but it would have been probably 650 pages instead of 605 had we put all of those in there. So we just tell you to go to Waldorf Inspirations and download them there, but they're not in that grades planning section.
Yes. You know what? I'm gonna just go back and point that out. So, so the very first form that has the block rotation for the year is under the grades, and it's so grade 2 planning, and that's what we showed you. But the majority of the forms for the book, as Janet is describing, are here under the Roadmap to Literacy. And you can scroll down and find them in this teacher planning forms section for grades 1 through 3. And there are a whole bunch of different types of forms. Right. So these are the forms that we used yesterday and the ones that we're going to look at now.
Right.
Okay. Good clarification. Thank you for.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, reminding me. Okay. So first is the blank form. And this is actually for second or third grade. And and here is a blank one. So why don't you describe to us, Janet, what is here on this page? It's a one-pager, to call them, okay? And it gives you the days of the week across the top, and then the types of activities over on the left with a little bit of a time suggestion.
Right. And like Jean mentioned yesterday, the time... again, another wonderful thing about homeschooling is that you can sort of time these things just by cluing into your child and seeing, are they really into it? Okay, we'll continue a little bit. Are they, if really quickly they get bored, then maybe you need to shift the instruction, or you need to sort of shift what you're doing a little bit to get their attention back. But anyway, so on that far left-hand side, that will tell you what subject is being taught during that time session. And we just have it set up in such a way that it maybe takes an hour. And again, for our homeschoolers, it may take 30 minutes, 40 minutes to, cover this. It depends on, it depends on the day, really, doesn't it? But so if you were planning your practice block and your math block was 4 weeks, then you would have 4 of these forms that you would fill out, one for each week of that block. And that you would just continue to carry things out. And so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you'll have a pretty similar rhythm. Friday, when we get over to that, I'll talk about why that has a different spacing and just different.
Good. Yeah. So this is in some ways similar to planning the main lesson block that we talked about in the last interview.
Mhm.
where that there are these shorter transition
Right.
times in between. So you would be working on a particular group of skills
Mhm.
for 15 to 20 minutes and then have some short transition activity. We're going to show
Right.
examples of this in just a minute.
Right.
And then introduction or review, and then some book work.
Yeah.
So, and as Janet pointed out, and we're going to again see examples, Fridays are a bit of a different day, which is perfect for homeschoolers, because most homeschoolers I know have their rhythm, their daily rhythm Monday or 4 days a week tends to
Mhm.
be a certain way, and then they usually have an additional day that is different. You know, they have a play date, or they have,
Right.
you know, go do some kind of outing or whatever. So
Right.
this fits quite well. All right, so now we're going to show you, we're going to pop back on the screen here and
Okay.
show you the filled out form
Right.
for a second grade practice block. So here
Right.
we are. This is an example.
Okay.
And again, it would be 1 week. Of
I
course,
put on my glasses to read this.
okay, it's longer filled out, right, than the blank template. But why don't you describe this to us?
Okay, so like Jean said, this reflects the rhythm of what you would do in a main lesson. It just makes it easier because you're used to that rhythm. And what we're having what we're suggesting in skills review is that you are working on whatever phonics rules, grammar rules, whatever your subject is that you're bringing out of the last main lesson. And so you are working on that, and then you continue your spelling program. And in this case, in first and second grade, it's sight words.
Mm-hmm.
And in third grade, you're actually working with the spelling program. But the sight words, this is what you would continue to do, and you continue to carry those over. That's the third thing down. You would continue with that throughout the practice block. So you would be working with sight words during your language skills practice block, as opposed to sticking it into your math main lesson. And so, again, we talked yesterday about how the fact that sight words can be pulled out of poems that you're using. They can be pulled out of just about anything you're doing. And also, it's nice to reflect if you're working on a particular phonics rule, if there are sight words that have that phonics rule in there. Like yesterday, we talked about the ow sound. And so down and around were two of the sight words that we worked with that week. So anyway, one thing about syllable cards, and you see down, that's the first quadrant over there in the left-hand corner, and then mystery words. Now, these you will find in the Roadmap to Literacy. You will find them on pages 170 to 172, and these really are methods of helping develop symbol imagery. And we know that when we want to spell something, and especially when we're learning to spell, that we have to visualize the word in our head. Right. And so you're visualizing, how do you spell below? Well, the word below appears in your head as you're writing it down. And so this is, and this skill can be developed. And so this is syllable cards and the mystery words are techniques in helping children be able to visualize how to spell words. And we work with words that use the phonics rules that we're working with at the time. Right. Anyway, so you want to make sure that you're working with symbol imagery in first and second grade almost on a daily basis. And by the end of second grade, children, if they've really been working with this, should be able to hold a 7-letter word in their mind, be able to see it,
Mm-hmm.
And that's because 7 letters is the longest English word that is 1 syllable. And you can't sound it out. Like if we go B low, we can go B, and then low, L-O-W. But when it comes to the word through, T-H-R-O-U-G-H, there's no syllabicating it out, right?
Right.
And so we have to be able to visualize that word in order to be able to spell it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I get this question a lot. What do you suggest to parents? Because in a homeschool setting, you may only have 1 or 2 children in grades 1 through 3.
Right.
But some children come to 1st grade or 2nd grade, as we're talking here, already knowing how to read. So do you still suggest some games and some of these activities?
Oh, for sure. See, the thing is that if a child learns to read very early, they do have a very strong symbol imagery. Mm-hmm. They have a very strong ability to memorize what a word looks like.
Right.
And know that that's that word. However, what we recommend with those children in particular is that you use nonsense words with them when you're using phonics rules and you're practicing phonics rules. Say, for example, you're teaching them the O-U-G-H spelling of though. Mm-hmm. Of the long O, O-U-G-H. And so, but they, in their reading, they have memorized the word though. And so what you would do is you would have them do something like, I'm trying to think, bro, B-R-O-U-G-H. And it would be a nonsense word. Since they've never seen that word, they would actually have to use their phonemic awareness to sound it out. Right. And what happens is those students often hit a wall. They can read everything in, 3rd, 4th, 2nd, 3rd, even 4th grade literature, because so much of it is still fairly simple in its vocabulary and spelling. Mm-hmm. And if they come to a word they really don't know, they'll just skip over it. Right. But unless there's someone around and they're curious to ask. But then what happens often is that in 4th, 5th grade, they'll hit this wall where the vocabulary and what they're reading is multisyllabic, and they don't have the phonemic awareness skills to sound it out. Mm-hmm. Right. And so they'll end up coming across vocabulary that they cannot read, and then all of a sudden, the rest of the class, in the case of the classroom, bypasses those students. And the parents are upset because they've always thought of their child as a great reader. The child's upset. Yeah. And the teachers...
Well, in a homeschool setting, it's frustration,
Yes.
that you first experience. Yeah.
So you want to make sure that, and this is really important, you want to make sure that even though if your child almost taught themselves to read, is a really good early reader, that you want to make sure that they do know all of these phonics skills and phonics rules that are laid out in section 4 of our book, that will give them the skill set they'll need to tackle multisyllabic, more sophisticated words later on. Yeah. Because you can't memorize every single word. Right. I guess maybe some photogenic memory. A photogenic mind maybe, right. But anyway, you give them the skills, and the way you do that is by using a lot of nonsense words. Yeah. They've never seen that before, so they actually have to use their developing phonemic awareness to sound it out. Yeah. Good. And then you can have fun making up a definition for it.
Yeah, that's fun. I love that.
Yeah, what's a clusp?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So, anyway, typically symbol imagery is not something that you really need to spend too much time on if your child has really strong symbol imagery. Where you need to put your focus would then be on learning phonics skills and all those phonics rules through nonsense words a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. All right. So skills practice.
Yes, skills practice. And every Monday you would introduce your sight words, and then you would find different ways to practice them. throughout the week.
Mhm.
And in the grades language arts section of our book, you'll find some files, ideas about fun ways to learn difficult words that, or also homophones. I mean, you know, like with blue and blue.
Yeah.
If you're getting ready to write, you know, I have a blue pencil, how do you know which one it is? And so how do you know which one is spelled? And so you have this like image where, well, if it's the wind blue, then it ends with the W for the wind, you know, and if it's the blue for, you know, the color of paint, then the UE, the U is there of a cup to hold the blue paint. So, you know, you can come up with, there's a lot of ideas that you can come up with to help your children
remember
the homophones, and then also learn how to do these sight words.
Yeah, good.
Okay, and if you can also see, I might just mention, if you can see, your plan is that you would carry, you know, the activity on Monday, you would carry, if it says IBID, you would carry it over throughout the rest of the week and just use different words, you know, just use different things. But we're only talking about 15, maybe even 10 minutes here with these.
Right.
So, yeah, you know, just quick, but practice.
Yeah, quick but effective.
Yes.
Okay, so then we have a transition, and we shared some about this yesterday, but I just want to reiterate here, because I've had this conversation with so many homeschooling parents, that instead of a super long circle time at the beginning of your morning, you can break it up and use some of those activities like poetry recitation, beanbag games, songs, and things like that. You can use those for just one at a time for transition.
Right. And you definitely want to work with the child's natural tendency to be able to sit focused for about 15-20 minutes at the most, and then they need to get up and move. And you know, if you don't build it in with purposeful movement, they'll do it anyway. Oh, you won't be in control.
Right. or they'll hit a wall and things will fall apart.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Okay, so now after you've had that little transition, then you're going to move in. You've had your review, got your literacy mind warmed up, got a little bit of transition to get the wiggles out. Now you're going to look at introducing or reviewing the, you know, the phonics rules in the case of the main lesson block before that you just finished was all about introducing a number of phonics rules and practicing reading and practicing writing. I mean, you know, everything, using it all together. And so you're going to be working on that. But for example, if you finished with the rule number 8, which is the last rule, and I don't remember what it is, in the phonemic awareness phase, and the students are really ready to go into the pattern phase, and you would introduce word families to your child. And Jean was going to let me say something about word families. So you'll notice in Roadmap to Literacy, we're very clear that consonant, vowel, consonant words such as bag, B-A-G, and word families using the word bag are to be taught very differently and at different stages. So when your child is developing phonemic awareness, that means that they are developing an awareness for every sound in a word. So you don't want to clump words together or letters together. You want it to be ba, a, g, bag, you know, and then they bring all of it together. So that is CVC, and we really, really want to keep children in that phase until they are very solid in their phonemic awareness and really do hear every sound and can pronounce every sound and recognize it.
Yes.
Then, once that's happened, that's one of the indicators of moving into the pattern phase. And with the pattern phase, we begin the year with word families because they're familiar with these CVC words. which word families have a lot of CVC words in them. But we're going to teach them how to read them in a different way. So we're going to introduce them to the ag family, and there's going to be bag and wag and sag and drag and flag and all of that. And this is really a reading fluency process and technique, is that the children, once they know that when AG is together, it's the ag sound, then when they see a word that it ends with AG, they automatically know what that is. Mm-hmm. And so they just look at the onset or the consonants that go before that, that ending and that family, and just stick that on. So instead of it being ag, it's ag. And anyway, so this is a way of differentiating why CVC is taught differently, different method than word family. But word family is a great way to start second grade or the pattern phase, because you're using all of those phonemic awareness skills that you had, that you already had learned, but in a new process.
Yeah, it's a great distinction. And just remember, just a reminder to everybody, the CVC are the words that are consonant, vowel, consonant. That's what.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Like dog.
Yeah. Bag. Yeah. Dog. Good. Okay.
All right.
So
and then you can see that goes. How does this work? You introduce about word families, and there's a really nice introduction, imagination again, right, in the book, and then you practice it, use, that for, maybe you would use it with the dog family, og family. Then the next day you would do more activities, more working with word families. The next day there's a kid writing, maybe they're going to use a little bit in there. Or you could, again, practice. So you just want to move the practice along, just build on it.
Yeah.
Across the week. Okay.
Good. Okay.
All right.
And then this is a little bit more specific to a classroom, but these would be different ideas of activities that you could do each day.
Yeah, and in fact, I would say that what you might do is look at one day, maybe have them do some kid writing. Again, that's chapter 3.13 in our book, and an incredibly effective tool for learning to read. Probably one of the most effective tools there is. And then tools there are. Anyway, so with reading, you might read one day, then the next day have them do kid writing, then the next day reading, next day kid writing. You could, work it out that way.
Yeah, or create a rhythm, for yourself, that on Mondays we do this, on Thursdays we do kid writing.
Yeah, and see, and if you do create that rhythm, then you see it doesn't take much to plan this.
Yeah.
Right?
That's super helpful. So true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so the chances of it happening are much greater.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good point. All right. Okay. Well, those are our forms that we just.
Now, wait a second. We have to go to Friday.
Oh.
Can we look at Friday for a minute?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So should I go back up?
To the top.
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing with Friday is that you could look at maybe 4 days, and in the case of homeschool, maybe 3 days, and use your Thursday becomes your Friday if you use your Friday to leave and go do play dates or something. But on the last day of your teaching week, in these practice blocks, that's a time for assessment. You want to, give a little spelling, some kind of spelling activity that would let you know if the children have learned those words. If not, you carry them over, one of them over to the next week, whatever. Then also it's a time where you can assess the phonics rule that you've been teaching them. In this case, word families, are they getting word families? I mean, if they figured out, that's Og, and then if you gave them the app family and they could figure out flap and lap and sap and nap, then they're ready to move on to the next thing. And that's the one thing about practice blocks that are different than what we've learned before, which is typically what you practice in practice blocks are the things that you learned in the previous language arts block.
Right.
You're practicing them, right? However, there are so many phonics rules to learn by the end of third grade to really, really deliver your child into the fourth grade curriculum, whether it's in public school, a Waldorf school, or the homeschool fourth grade curriculum, where they're doing individual readers, they're doing reading, research about their animal, or whatever they're doing. That there are so many phonics skills that really what we need to do is to continue those, to keep them going. So, and you never know how long it's going to take your child to learn a phonics rule. And you just, once they've learned it, and because they build on each other, it makes no sense to, teach homophones, for example, blue and blue, until your child has learned about all the vowel teams that actually make up the homophones. And that more explanation in the book on that. But anyway, so every phonics rule in Roadmap to Literacy has its prerequisites, and that students have to know in order to do that. So that's the thing, is that really teaching phonics rules is an ongoing thing for the first three years. You just keep, you can take a break here and there between them, but really once they've learned one that they can use to read, to decode, then you're ready to move on to the next one, which is going to build on that. Yeah. And so it's this sequential process that you don't want to drop, and you also can't plan it. It's
right,
different
because you're doing these little informal assessments and seeing where you are and what you need to bring next. And in some ways it's easier in a homeschool setting to do that, because you could practically, sometimes that kind of informal assessment is happening on a Monday when you're just doing the activity, right? And you make a little note that, you need to do more of this. But it is, one of the most helpful things I've found about these conversations we're having is just that idea of pulling the thread forward from the previous main lesson block into this month's practice block. And then kind of doing that alternation between math and language arts. It's an important rhythm for us to understand in order for the skills to develop. And it is, and it keeps, it just keeps this sort of steady flow of growth and learning and developing skills that is so exciting for the children, because step by step, as they grasp one more skill, then they'll start to, they'll find it in the books they're looking at and the books that they're reading. And then it's so empowering to them to have this ongoing growth of knowledge that they can then use in their writing and in their reading. Very exciting for them. And you can see it doesn't really take much to plan a practice class every day. And again, you'll figure it out. Some children, 30 minutes is all they're going to need, or 1.5. And then other children, my grandsons, like I told you yesterday, the one grandson, a 30-minute practice block would be just fine. That's all he could have handled. And after a main lesson, and then my younger grandson, he could do this stuff for an hour and be happy. And I want to say one thing too. When we look at all these IBIDs, this is opportunity for all kinds of practice activities, that you can find all kinds of fun practice activities. And you can even use some of those fun practice activities on Friday,
to check out how are they doing on the phonics rules. And I have a Pinterest account, and it's Janet Langley 50, but I have boards for every single block in every single grade. And so if you go to, if you go there, I have lots and lots and lots of ideas for how to, create practice activities together, or you do that for your child. Anyway, so there's a lot there too that is even, more, because it's not mine. I mean, Waldorf Inspirations reflects about 60 years of teaching that Patty and I have done. However, of course, Pinterest is everybody sharing everything. Everybody.
Yeah, you can have a collection. That's wonderful. I always
exactly.
We're gonna come back on, and I want to share. I will add the link to your Pinterest
Sure.
below the video, because I think that is a great place. I have a Pinterest account too, and it's such a wonderful tool for collecting ideas, right?
Right. Yes,
and
absolutely.
I often share with parents when children do need this, when they're trying to plan out these practice sessions so that they can help their children move forward, right, with their progress, with their reading and their writing skills. I think it's so important to keep it playful.
Yes.
So to be able to find these games and activity ideas is wonderful.
Right. The one thing I might add about these activities, there are two kinds of activities. One activity is, we call it activity A in our book, but these are activities that maybe you engage with your child and you do it together, or if you have a classroom, they're doing it, a couple of children together in a team, whatever. And it's an interactive, and of course, as the adult, in the homeschool situation, you can set it up so your child is doing most of the work, or as much as they can in the learning. But in fact, you can even have them teach you. But when you talk about an assessment, then you're really selecting an activity that child has to do on their own. And your body language. You can't help them. You can be part of that activity if you're going to use it to see do they really know it.
Yes. And then you're really in an observation mode, right?
Yes.
You're really observing.
Absolutely.
Instead of engaging.
Yeah, exactly. And there's lots and lots of those fun activities, and the students don't even have a clue they're being assessed.
Right? Which is good.
They're just playing another game.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much for letting me share some of our ideas with you. And I know that I think it's been great, because how we're approaching planning, and this is so in line with what you're doing already with your tutorials and how you work with your the people that follow you. And so I'm very, very excited to see where things are supporting each other for even improving literacy instruction.
I am really excited too, and I really have a lot of homeschoolers are interested in this.
I hear from them, actually. I do hear from quite a few that have gone to Waldorf Inspirations and sent me a message, and it's we've almost got it now where I think the book will be able to be ordered in Australia and New Zealand, the UK.
That's wonderful.
And where it actually will be printed there. And so the shipping costs will,
because it's quite a hefty book.
Yeah, I think someone told me that I'm working with in Australia said it cost $171 to have our book sent to her.
Oh my gosh, that's more than the cost. Oh my goodness.
No, it included the cost of the book, but it was the books, the book's 3 years of curriculum, so $25 a year. But if you want to look at it that way, but the cost of shipping it was almost double.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, I'm so glad. So those of you who are interested in purchasing the book, you can go to waldorfinspirations.com.
right,
That's
get
where
order here.
Yep, that's where you buy it. And I will have links to the whole series of interviews that we've done. It's just been a fabulous conversation.
Yes, it has. Thank you.
Yeah, and I look forward to hearing. I'll share with you the feedback that I'm hearing from homeschoolers too, and we'll continue the conversation because it's a great one. Yeah.
You know, I might mention one thing is that when you go onto Roadmap to Literacy, usually there on the homepage there's a list of intensive trainings we're doing for teachers, and I always ask that homeschool parents be included in those intensives. So if anyone wants to come and do a 3-day training, you know, on the Roadmap to Literacy and the curriculum and how to approach it with activities and, you know, things like that, you're more than welcome. And we always have some homeschool parents there as well, so that's good.
That's wonderful. And those trainings are on the website as well. So,
they are. They're on the homepage. They're listed there. Yeah.
That's
We have one coming up the end of this month in New Hampshire, and another one in August in Connecticut, and I'm in conference with British Columbia maybe in August, later August. So
wonderful. I was this close to coming to get to meet you in person at the end of June, but
we'll have to do that.
We will. Didn't happen this time, but soon. So thank you so much, Janet.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take good care. Bye-bye.
Good luck, everyone. Sure.